There are some people who it seems like it's their life's mission to constantly go against an idea or a plan that you might have. Every time maybe you tell this person how much you've grown in an area, they usually pick out a flaw or counteract it by saying another area that you can grow in instead of praising you or celebrating your growth. After experiencing this, it can leave you feeling super weighed down and just feeling like kind of defeated. If this is somebody who you call a friend, it can be kind of confusing. Why does it feel like every time I say something or share my opinion that they're always going against it? There can be a variety of reasons as to why this may be the case, but one thing that I've grown to know in my 27 years of living is that oftentimes people oppress what they are intimidated by. A lot of times when we think about oppression, we think of physical force or slavery, and that makes sense because the definition for oppression is someone who has excessive power or force over another and they exercise that. A lot of times, even if you look up oppression, times what will come up is the social idea of oppression when there's one group oppressing another, which can be the marginalization. We can look at women's rights, slavery, other areas, but I found online another definition of oppression, which was the weighing down of one's spirit. This points out that oppression is not only physical or set up for social situations, but it can also be done emotionally. If this person says they care about me, why do they feel like they have to oppress me? One reason can be that when a person or something is acting as an oppressor, they are feeding their ego. I don't know what you think of when you hear the word ego, but generally speaking, it's something that feeds into somebody's worth and it feeds into their self esteem. It may not seem like somebody putting me down or somebody making me feel burdened is helping their self esteem, but ultimately, if you go back to the first definition of oppression, which is looking at an excessive use of power, sometimes somebody making you feel bad about something or making you feel like something isn't possible, getting that response from you, them knowing that you're not going to do it because they have that impact on you, is feeding their ego. Another reason can be because they feel insecure about their future. If somebody's insecure about their future and they know that you or somebody you know has plans to go on in a different area of your life and to is making plans to take the next steps to change their future, or not even the future, maybe it's just you growing in certain areas and the other person is insecure in that particular area. So there are some people who when they see that somebody is propelling or going far in an area, they can't handle it, and the easiest thing for them to do, instead of putting in the work to be accountable, putting in the work to grow, putting in the work to try to develop certain areas, they may try to oppress you emotionally. Or sometimes people feel trapped by their circumstances. And because they feel trapped by their circumstances, they feel like you're going to come with me. I'm not just going to go through this alone. I'm going to trap you by in your spirit, keeping your emotions in a cage and keeping them from growing to the next level, because then if it goes to the next level without me, or if the cage is opened, then where is that going to leave me? Or how am I going to get out of my circumstance? Also, people tend to get really uncomfortable and thrown off when they are unfamiliar with the consequences of embracing something new. You might experience oppression, right? Let's say maybe it's through bullying, like at school, or bullying in the family, and maybe it's because you dress a certain way, or it's because you have a different path for your career compared to somebody else. They might use the phrase of, oh, I'm just trying to be realistic, or I'm just trying to be a realist, or I want to see you succeed. Sure, but that could be a part of it. But the other part of it can be that when it comes to embracing something new and when people don't know what the consequences are for that, then they might want to oppress through intimidation. So this leads me to this phenomenon called the mere exposure effect. And so the mere exposure effect basically says that somebody's change in preference isn't really based on bias or observing certain attributes of a stimuli, but instead the change in preference is based on the objective history of exposure from that stimuli, the history of the result. A lot of this was based on marketing and it was used to see how a product could be sold. I'll use an example that happened to me this week. So this week, my boss, we were having a meeting and she said, hey, I'm going to get us some lunch. what do you want to eat? So she said to choose some of the items that you want. So it was a sandwich and nothing too fancy, but it was good. I mean, and it's free, so I'm gonna eat it. And then you get to choose a drink and you get to choose a chip. I'm not picky when it comes to food, in my opinion. When it comes to chips, generally speaking, I only eat potato chips. And I know it's kind of boring, but like sour cream and onion, salt and vinegar, barbecue, it just feels like my taste buds are being assassinated and it's too much. Some people say it's plain, but I feel like with each potato chip, you don't know what the flavor is going to be. Some are going to have more oil, some are going to be more salty. So in this case, my choice of the plain potato chips wasn't based on the fact that I knew what the calorie intake was, or wasn't based on the fact that I knew that this particular brand made the chips extra crispy or extra salty. It was just because I knew that my history of potato chips is always good, it's always stable. I'm going to come out feeling like my stomach was satisfied, my taste buds weren't assassinated, or it felt like they were being attacked or overwhelmed, and that they're almost always going to compliment my sandwich. So there was no hesitation, even though it was a different brand of potato chips that I never tried before. How would this look emotionally? So one time I had a friend who was going back to visit the area that the friend was in because I had to go and get some items. So I go down there and it was like a drive to get there. And while I'm there, I stopped to visit her and her roommate. I tell her about a situation at in this new environment that I'm in, which is in grad school, and how I responded to this group that kind of pissed me off because I didn't like how they responded to me. And I felt like they were being kind of fake or shady, to say the least. I was telling her how I addressed it and kind of went about expressing how I felt. Nothing too deep, just a simple message. And after I told her, she said, "Oh, I like the old Angelica better." And her roommate at the time said, "Really? I like the new Angelica better." Oftentimes, I find that if there's somebody saying, "I like the old you," there's usually some way that the old you was benefiting them and this new you is intimidating them. Something about it is making them feel kind of worried and they don't know what to do with it. It's my belief that her change in preference for the old me was based on the history of the results of the old me. There was a familiarity with my actions and how I might respond to things and how I might do things. And to be honest, at that time, I wasn't really fully developed in my assertiveness. And so there were often times where I might have not expressed certain things because, generally speaking, like when I was younger and even up until maybe 5 years ago, there was like two ways that I'll deal with conflict. I'll either get really upset and like kind of say things that might not really represent how I feel because I feel so angry. And because that wasn't always a good thing, I would usually default or counteract that by not saying anything at all, because I couldn't really express what I wanted to say in an assertive way and I couldn't get the words together when I wanted to. But they didn't know that. But there were situations where that happened in social settings where I didn't really defend myself and they benefited from that. And I'm not saying that this person was malicious per se, but there was no consideration about the attributes that I grew in. There wasn't any acknowledgement of, "Oh, I like how you stood up for yourself. I like how you decided to be assertive in that situation and kind of tell them how you felt." No. Whether you're in a situation where you're experiencing emotional oppression or you're out of a situation where you're not experiencing that, sometimes we're still left with the culture of the oppressor. What does that look like? The culture of the oppressor can be little seeds of doubt that go against what you want to do. We can then turn into the oppressor ourselves and end up going into self intimidation. And I basically mean that we've been around the culture of the oppressor for so long that even if they're not there, we self intimidate. This is when we hold ourselves back because we've allowed others to convince us that our present self isn't enough to move forward. Maybe you want to make a design company and you've gotten out of the presence of this oppressor, but you then turn to self intimidation. You tell yourself that you can't do it because right now I don't have enough skills, you don't have enough talent, so therefore you don't take that step. This happened to me a few times. When I sat down and thought about it, I realized that I was trying to assert control through self intimidation. So, the first question for you to think on is, what are some ways that you are currently trying to assert control through self intimidation and why? And if you want to leave the answer in the comments, you can, but you don't have to. One way that I was trying to assert control was by not making any more videos. And at the time, I was starting out with this channel, it was very new. I would tell myself, well, nobody really feels like my voice matters anyway. I've never really, shared my opinions that much. And when I do in the past, it didn't really matter. So therefore, I don't need to make any more videos. You know what? It doesn't matter because if I do, then I might get negative comments. So that's a good thing. That you might have thought about that. It's like, okay, I see ways that I use self intimidation, but how do I undo that? So, one good way to undo a culture or a habit is to look back and reflect on the moments that you wanted to speak up, but you had to silence yourself. So, another question to ask is, what are some ways that you silenced yourself in order to be accepted by the oppressor? So I was trying to silence myself by not making any outlines for videos or by saying that I didn't have the proper equipment anyway. So some things that I did to help with decreasing self-intimidation, one thing was looked at the bigger picture. So yeah, maybe I'll get negative comments on this video, but I like to do it for fun. I want to get better at public speaking and it can be helpful to somebody else. The thing that I did was use Socratic questioning or something called putting your thoughts on trial. What's the evidence for this belief? Is it a fact or an opinion? Then I also would distance myself from people who reinforce themes of self doubt. And notice I said distancing, I didn't really say cutting off. Sometimes relationships don't necessarily have to be cut off completely in order to reach a certain goal. And another thing that I did was put myself in situations where I could practice growth in the area that I didn't feel strong in. I hope that you are able to break this culture of self intimidation that you might be going through. I go through it every day because ultimately it's always going to be a fight to try and fight with certain negative thoughts that we have or negative beliefs about ourselves. I hope that the questions that I asked were a tool for reflection and a springboard to figure out what next steps you might need to take. Thank you for watching and stay amplified.